He's an award-winning Minneapolis-based chef who measures success by purpose, not praise. Hey everyone, I'm Cappy and welcome to Beyond the Plate. This is a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the food industry and the social impact they have made in their communities. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you've listened before, we're glad you're back. If you're just tuning in, don't miss Heard, our short audio newsletter that comes out every other Monday, right here on Beyond the Plate. I'm sharing what's on my plate, from culinary insights to restaurants and recipes, all in just a few minutes. Please enjoy this episode as we go beyond the plate with Chef Gavin Kaysen. Chef, first of all, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And second, do you feel measuring success by purpose and not praise is a norm in the industry?
I don't know if it's necessarily a norm per se. I think it has become maybe more normal than it once was. That might be due to the fact that there are a lot of options out there to get praise from. You know, there's a lot of lists, there's a lot of awards, there's a lot of best of and all of that. So I think when you have all of that, no matter how much you do get or don't get, I think from a guest perspective, they don't grab onto all of it. So how do you measure success when they don't grab onto all of it? I think honestly, a lot of it is how busy is your restaurant every night? And if the restaurant's busy every night, then that part is working, which is really what to me was actually so important, because ultimately the responsibility is to then take care of the team who's working for you.
Absolutely. Who instilled the sense of purpose in you?
I would say it's been a lot of people. And I would go to the core of those people being very much rooted by Danielle Ballud, who I worked for, Thomas Keller, who I've worked alongside for the last almost 20 years now with Mentor, BKB organization, as well as just observing other greats in our profession. I think I see this now more as I watch my kids grow up. My kids tend to observe. So they'll go to a playground, and before just jumping into the slides and hanging out with everybody, they'll spend 10 or 15 minutes sort of observing, what am I going to do? I don't see every kid do that, but I can relate to that. I very much will go into an environment and sort of observe it for so long to understand where I'm going to go. I mean, frankly, the reason I took my job with Danielle was really through an opportunity of observation. I knew that there was a tremendous amount of opportunity to work for him, but what better opportunity than to be his chef de cuisine at one of his best restaurants? And you got a bird's eye view of how one of the best restaurateurs in North America, if not the world, is running his company. It's a pretty good way to sort of get a cheat code.
Heck yeah. It's funny. So I have 6-year-old twins going on 7, boy, girl. And it's funny. You give the park analogy to watch one of them that goes right in and one of them that stands and watches to see how she's going to attack it.
That's right. Exactly.
That's funny. Okay. So let's go back to your childhood. You were born in California?
I was, yeah, in LA, just outside of LA.
Can you draw us a picture of little Gavin Kaysen?
We lived in California until I was, I think, 2 or 3. And then we moved to just outside of Chicago. We lived in a suburb called Lake Forest and Lake Bluff area. It's sort of 2 little suburbs.
How long were you there?
We were there until I was 7 and then moved to Minneapolis when I was 7 years old.
Crazy. I'm from Deerfield originally, so.
Oh, funny. Listen, as a kid, I don't remember much in California. I remember being in an earthquake because I was playing with my toys and they all started to shake and I thought my toys made the ground shake, and it was not that. In fact, it was an earthquake. And then in the Lake Bluff, Lake Forest area, it was a very small community, super small town outside of Chicago. Mr. T lived in the neighborhood next door to us. Walter Payton lived, a couple streets over, and you would go trick-or-treating and he would give you his rookie card instead of candy. It's just that was sort of what I remember growing up. And then we moved here when I was 7 years old, where both my parents grew up. They both grew up in St. Paul. So for them, they were coming home to be closer to family, sort of that boomerang effect. And for us, we were just tagging along.
Got it. So take me into the kitchen. I want to hear your childhood as it relates to food, but I know I've heard stories about Grandma Dorothy and the sunbuckle cookies and everything. What was that like?
She definitely was the first influence to me of food. I mean, in a way of just sort of family, everybody sitting down, but also just sort of the power of being able to get everybody to sit down so quickly when food is done. I mean, it was grandma cooking meatloaf or chicken and dumplings or baking sunbuckle cookies or whatever it might be. And so just those memories of being with her were more fun to me than going outside and playing with my brother and my cousins and stuff like that outside in the yard. I would rather have been in the kitchen.
That's so cool. Did mom and dad cook?
No, neither of my parents really grew up cooking much. My mom's mom, my other grandmother, she was a very good cook, but she never really taught my mom mom how to do it. There was sort of like this generational change of like that generation, my grandmother's generation, they all knew how to cook, but didn't always pass it down then to the next generation so well because of what was being introduced to them, such as microwaves, canned foods, etc., TV dinners. They kind of went into that direction and they were busy with their careers. I mean, my dad was in the medical business and the medical sales business and medical devices. My mom was a dental hygienist. And so they were busy working. And then they were busy schlepping us around to different sports venues. Both my brother and I played hockey and soccer and baseball and every other, whatever you could play at a time when you could play more than one sport as a kid, which has since changed. And so family dinner at home was less of that sort of romantic experience of, hey, let's all sit down and eat, the prime rib or the roast beef or whatever that we've made. And it was more just like, what do we have? What can we make that's quick? Pasta, whatever. When I was then younger, my mom then instructed that my brother and I were sort of in charge of making dinner 1 or 2 nights a week, at least like participate. So like, okay, we want to make tacos. I mean, it's not like we would make them from scratch, right? You'd buy the packaged stuff and ground meat and mix it and grab some hard shell tacos, mince up some lettuce, cheese, and you're good.
How old were you at this point?
Probably 12, 13. And then I kind of took it to a different level because my grandmother bought me the Betty Crocker cookbook. And so I wanted to do stuff from Betty Crocker's cookbook. And she had a crock pot section in her book. I'd go to the grocery store and I would buy a leg of lamb and yogurt and curry and apricots and garbanzo beans and just throw it all in the crock pot before school and turn it on low and then come home and microwave some couscous. And then I would have like couscous with braised leg of lamb and yogurt and apricots. Now, like, sure, it sounds sort of crazy to think, but I was just simply following a really easy recipe that made sure that when I'd come home from soccer, my brother come home from hockey, and my parents would come home from work, we'd all have dinner and we'd all eat at different times, quite honestly. Or I'd throw it in a burrito and have like a lamb burrito or whatever. But I never thought of it at the time. I never thought of cooking as a profession. It was never part of my world. So I never had any sort of influence to think otherwise. Up until this point, the finest restaurant I had eaten at was a steakhouse called Steak and Ale and a seafood spot called Red Lobster. So those were the two sort of fine dining places that I had been to. And anything other than that, we just never did. We just never ate at. So yeah, that was my food childhood growing up.
Tell me about your first restaurant job.
So my very first restaurant job was actually at a TCBY yogurt, which I wouldn't necessarily classify a restaurant as a restaurant, but I was not impressed with the vanilla yogurt recipe that they had created. So I brought home a bag of it and I tried to like manipulate it and change it based on adding like real vanilla and some other things. And I brought it back and I put it in the machine and turned it and had my manager taste it. And I said, what do you think of it? And he says, why is it different? I said, do you like it better than the other one? And he said, why is it different? And I said, well, I took the bag home because I didn't like this recipe, so I just wanted to change it.
So good.
And he says, so you stole the bag? I said, well, technically, I brought it back. Anyways, he fired me. So I got fired from that job because I allegedly stole a bag of frozen yogurt that they couldn't use.
He probably knew it was better, too.
100%. He just didn't want to admit it. And they went bankrupt, so who cares?
Dude, my brother worked at TCBY when he was younger in the suburb of Chicago, and he, too, got fired. But he got fired because when you would make the cones, the fresh cones there, but he would eat too many of them, I think, so they fired him.
So that's what happens when you get us kids to show up. So from there, I then ended up working at a Subway, which was ironically next door to TCBY Yogurt. And so I was probably 15, 16 years old at this time. Now, I've told this story before, but basically what I recognized early on was that people that wore business suits and came in every day for lunch at Subway, again, I'm 46. This is 30 years ago when Subway was relatively new on the market and was a newer fast food. Back then, frankly, it was probably a healthier fast food, right? But I would memorize people's orders because they'd come in every day and they'd get the same thing. So I thought, well, if I would just memorize the order, they don't have to wait in line. If they don't have to wait in line, I can do more people. And if we do more people, we make more money. And if we make more money, we can all get paid more money, right? I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm 15, 16 years old. So people would come in and I'd say, hey, what's up? Andrew, how are you? Your 6-inch tuna fish sandwich is at the register. We'll see you tomorrow. They'd come back the next day. I'd say, hey, Sue, how are you? Your turkey sandwich. And then somebody would inevitably say in line, like, do you know all these people? Are they like parents, friends, cousins? I say, no. They just come in every day. So I memorized their order. And then I would say, as a typical 16-year-old smartass, if you come in every day, I'll memorize yours too. But if you come in 3 days a week, I'm not going to memorize it. So this guy moves in next door. His name's George Serra. He opens up an Italian restaurant that is supposed to be fast casual, which that term didn't exist then. And it was called Pasta Time. And the intention was you'd come in, you'd order a pasta and a salad, and you would either take it to go or you could eat it there. So he would come into Subway and he'd order a tuna fish sandwich on a round bun. He'd pay for it. He'd walk out the front door and he'd throw it in the trash. And I was like, yo, he doesn't even eat it. He doesn't even like open it. He doesn't even like look at it. He was a French guy. And I said, George, with a pretty thick accent, I said, what's your deal, man? Why do you come in here and order this sandwich and then leave? And he says, I don't care about the sandwich. He says, the food's terrible here. He says, what I care about is how you are with the food. He says, I know you don't understand this because you're too young. And he says, you're too stupid, but you have a gift with food and you have a gift with how to talk to people about food, and you should come work for me and I'll pay you $1 more than what they're paying you here. And I said, okay. So I quit and I went and worked for him. And I didn't realize at the time who he was, because Google didn't exist. I didn't realize at the time what he was trying to teach me, because I was a 16-year-old kid who had no intention of understanding how cooking made me feel. What I did know is that when I got older in high school, I would always prefer to be in the kitchen over being at a party with my friends. Much like when I was 7 years old, I would prefer to be in the kitchen with my grandmother versus outside playing with my brother and my cousins. So I knew that was the space that I felt the happiest in. I knew that feeding and nourishing people gave me great gratitude and made me a happy person. And so I sort of kept chasing that until I realized what he was teaching me was that this can actually be a profession. And I remember very distinctly the day he sat down with my mom and dad to explain to my parents that this is what I should do for a living. Telling a mother who is a dental hygienist and a father who is a CEO of a medical devices company. My mom has very creative bones in her body. My father does not. Telling them that their son should effectively go into this creative route of being a chef that 30 years ago didn't have even close to what it has today in terms of opportunity and possibility was a steep conversation to have and a steep hill to climb. And I give my parents the most amount of credit because I went to college at the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh for a year, and I failed out of college pretty quickly. And I came home and my mom said, how did you do? And I said, well, I got this pink slip. I'm basically not allowed to come back for a semester because I did so poorly. And I explained to her, I really just want to cook. There was an Italian restaurant near the college that I ended up working at during when I was supposed to be at school. I was actually working. And I just said, I love cooking. Like, it's what makes me the most happy. And I give them the most amount of credit for them saying at that time, then go do that. They could have done the opposite and said, no. You need a 4-year degree. You need paper. You need to prove that you have a bachelor's degree in X. Then you can pursue that. I would have lost so much time had I had done that. And more so, I would have lost my experience that I had in Europe and in other places, because I ended up pursuing those while my friends were in college. So I saw a part of the world that I otherwise maybe never would have seen.
Incredible. You mentioned mom and dad. I'm curious, when you go back to their parents' house for dinner, what dishes does mom make that take you back to childhood?
She doesn't cook at all, like nothing. We had my dad had his birthday this past weekend. My brother and I got a text which was, Dad doesn't want to cook for his own birthday, so you guys are going to be in charge of cooking. Not like, hey, I'm the mom, I'm going to cook. Like, you guys figure it out. She said, I'll go buy an ice cream cake. It's not as though she's bad at it. It's just that she doesn't have any interest in it. That's the difference. It's all good. But I sort of never grew up with that as part of my childhood.
So you wind up going to culinary school. I'm curious, what did you love about your time at New England Culinary?
What I loved the most is I loved that I was around people that were like-minded. I had found my group of people that I was really excited to be around. I had not been around that, frankly, ever. The only time I was around that was when I was around George, but that was a singular person that was generationally farther away from me, so harder to relate to. My best friend in culinary school, Reed Anderson, is still my best friend today, who I still talk to. He and I were in all the classes together, and we have great memories of our time together at that culinary school. But I remember showing up, I will never forget this as well. I remember showing up to culinary school and I went over to Reed's apartment and he was like, we're trying to just sort of like get to know each other on a food level. Like, where are you at? How much do you know? How much do you know? And not in a like egotistical way, but just like, where'd you come from? Now, he grew up with a family who was huge into food. His parents cooked a ton, only child. And he had these books, man, that like, and photos of like dinners that he did for his parents and their friends, like stuff that blew me away as a 19-year-old kid. I'm like, holy shit, you cooked all this food? Like, I had no idea you could even do it. And I will say say that like that's when my competitive spirit kicked in, because I was like, in order to be great, I have to be better than my competition. And it's like, he was my best friend. I never saw him as competition, but I saw what he was able to do as definitely light years ahead of where I even was. So I knew I was in the right spot.
That's so interesting. And what advice would you give to kids like today wanting to go to culinary school? And I'm curious if you feel like that same feeling now. Like I was in culinary school 25 years ago, and it was a very different time than kids talking about going to culinary school today.
Listen, I still think that it's a great experience to go to. What I am grateful for is that I spent years working in this profession prior to going to culinary school. So I didn't go to culinary school with this expectation as if in 2 years I was going to become a chef. I went to culinary school with the expectation of in 2 years, I'm going to know more than I know today. I'm going to have a foundation. And ultimately, like that's what I needed. I needed structure. And that structure came through culinary school. And I needed to build the foundation brick by brick to understand what that structure looked like. I still stay in touch with people from culinary school as a result. I mean, I'm very close with, like I said, Reed and many others. And I think that having that foundation, it helps develop the disciplines that you need later on when you get into cooking. Because if you just work only in the profession and you don't want to go to culinary school, which is of course an option, you are in charge of your own destiny and fate. So, you need to find mentors, you need to find organizations, you need to find restaurant groups to work for that will make you better than you thought you ever could be. And then once you get close to being even close to that good, go to your chef or your mentor or your boss and say, where do I go next? You tell me what I need to learn and I will go work for that person. The mistake that's often made by younger cooks, and it happened even when you and I went to culinary school, is, they get out of culinary school and they say, okay, now I'm a chef and I'm going to go look for a chef job. It's like, we have no idea how to be a chef. We have no clue what that even means. Or maybe just don't worry about accelerating it. Take the time to learn as much as you can learn, because at some point you're not going to be able to cook as much because you're going to be doing so many other things.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's such great advice. So before your time with Danielle, your career was already very impressive in and of itself. I would love to give a chef's notes version from like culinary school graduation up until your time in New York.
So after culinary school, I went to Napa Valley and worked at Domaine Chandon under Robert Curry. From there, I moved to Switzerland and worked for a gentleman named Jackie Vouillet at a restaurant called Auberge de Lavaux. Jackie came up to me after my time with him and said, you should go work for this new chef in London. Not new, but he's got all the press right now. And his name's Gordon Ramsay, and he just got 3 stars. And I said, okay. So of course I did what you did then. You cold called the kitchen and asked for Gordon, which I did. And I went and did a stage there. I did not take the job there because I was not willing to get a visa. I didn't want to move back to America to wait 6 months for a work visa. So Gordon's team suggested that I go work for his mentor, a chef by the name of Marco Pierre White. Our generation knows of him. The younger generation might not know as much of him unless they watch Instagram reels now and see him pop up every once in a while. But he was a larger than life personality, and he had retired by the time I was working for him. However, he was around in the kitchen. From London, moved to San Diego, worked at a restaurant called El Biscocho in the Rancho Bernardo Inn. Started out as a line cook, moved up to sous chef, eventually became chef de cuisine, where I really started to sort of grow into and develop what my personality of cuisine was all about and what I wanted to do. In my last year in San Diego, I had won Food and Wine Best New Chef, did Bocuse d'Or for Team USA, competed on Next Iron Chef Food Network, and then eventually took the job at Café Beloud as the chef de cuisine of that restaurant. And that all happened in 1 year of 2007. It was a wild year.
Wow, that is a wild year. So 2007, I'm curious about that. Representing Team USA Bocuse d'Or, which for those listening who don't know is essentially like the World Chef Championships. I have a good Bocuse story, but I don't want to take up too much time on here. Were you surprised that you landed on such like a huge global culinary stage? That's a success story,
100%, because there was no expectation. So the way that it happened was the chef who I was working for, his name was Patrick Ponsati, French chef from Toulouse. He asked me to compete in a competition called the National Cuisine it's called the Trophy Passion now, but it was like the national trophy of like cuisine and pastries or something like that. So it was a US version. So you had to create a platter of food. And in our case, I think our theme was cod. And then you had to do 10 desserts with chocolate and Grand Marnier and puff pastry somehow included. So I went to Rhode Island. I competed in that competition. It was against 6 other chefs. To my surprise, I won the competition. Now, all that did was it granted me the right to then represent the United States in the international version of this competition in Paris, and I was to compete against 18 other countries around the world. I had no idea what this even meant. I trained for that competition. I went to Paris. Pierre Gagnier was the head judge. I competed. I took first place in the world for my fish platter, and I took third place in the world for the entire competition. And I was the first American to stand on the podium in the history of this competition, and the first American to stand on the podium in 26 years. But the last one was French born. So I was the first American born chef to ever stand on the podium at this age. I was 25 years old, 26. Pierre Gagnier walked up to me and said, "You should do the Bocuse d'Or." I said, "What is the Bocuse d'Or?" And he says, "It's a competition in Lyon held every other year, et cetera." He explains it. So I go to Lyon in 2005 and I observe the competition with a guy named Jean-Jacques Dietrich, who has since passed away, and Jean Banchet, who has also passed away, but was a very, very famous chef in Chicago. And Monsieur Banchet walked me around. He and Mr. Bocuse were very, very close. So Mr. Banchet walked me around the competition. I just found these photos actually the other day cleaning out a room in my house of all these photos that I took of the competition behind the scenes. That day I decided to do Bocuse d'Or for Team USA. I ended up then applying for that. Then they took 6 of us. They brought us down to 3. I competed in the finals in Chicago at the National Restaurant Show against 2 other chefs. It was myself and my commis. His name was Brandon Rogers. And to our surprise, we won. I didn't think we were going to win because the front runner was a guy who had taken second place 2 years in a row. And it was very clear that he was there to win. And we ended up winning that competition. Then again, winning the opportunity to then represent the United States in 2007. Crazy enough, I actually found, for the people that will watch this is my menu from when I competed in 2007. And that's Brandon. Brandon went off to work very well in this profession. He was a chef de partie at Restaurant Daniel, and then he moved to the French Laundry, worked his way all the way up in the French Laundry to a good position, ended up leaving with Corey Lee and opening up Benu for Corey and was his executive chef for his company. He since recently has left, and now he runs a company down in San Diego called Brant Beef and is their corporate chef. And ironically, that was the only cash sponsor we had when we competed in 2007 was Eric Brandt and Brant Beef. And what they gave us, I think their cash sponsor, I believe, was $20,000. And it saved me from being more in debt than I already was. But it was an incredible competition. I never planned to go the competitive route because I didn't know it existed. But I will tell you, the family that I've been able to create internationally because of that competition is unmistakably one of the most beautiful gifts I've ever had in my life. No doubt about it. Anywhere I travel in the world, there is somebody that knows or has done Bocuse d'Or, and they accept you with open arms as a result.
That is so cool. So cool. So you mentioned that year you had done Iron Chef, but I know later on you were a culinary consultant on one of the Iron Chef Netflix special series or shows.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is. I'm curious, what you learn from that process about food media or TV.
So Eitan Keller, who owns the rights to Iron Chef in America, was our producer when we did the next Iron Chef and even filmed the show Iron Chef back in 2007 or 8, whenever I did it. 2020 hits, it's COVID, and he calls me up and says, "Hey, Netflix is bringing back the show and I need some help on the culinary side of things. Would you mind being a culinary producer with me and helping?" I said, "Of course." So we were in charge of, with a team, deciding what the theme of ingredients would be. What I learned was there are no walls of creativity you can't break down. Think as big as you can think. So we wanted to have sturgeon as one of the secret ingredients. So we didn't just buy sturgeon, right? We found the best sturgeon we could find, farm raised in California, and had them put it in an aqua tank truck and drive it to the studios in LA. And it lived behind the studios. And then the Iron Chef and the competitor would have to go out there and net catch the sturgeon that they wanted to use for that competition for that day. We had milk as a secret ingredient. So we didn't just have milk. We had cows, camels, goats being milked on the set in LA for that competition.
Oh, that's so great. Okay, so you mentioned the cold call to Gordon Ramsay at that time. Was it a similar scenario with how you wind up going to New York and connecting with Danielle?
Yeah, I sent him a letter and I requested to do a 1-week stage with him. And I just wanted to see, what does it look like to stand with the Yankees while they're winning the World Series? And so I spent 1 week there. He was not there the first couple of days, and then he was there. I've often told this story, and I've reflected on this more times than I could probably admit. I don't know what happened in the universe of that week that allowed us to connect in the way that we did. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the gravitational pull was for either one of us. All I know is that when I saw what his kitchen was creating, I knew undoubtedly that I needed to be a part of it. And I knew no matter what, I needed that to round out a part of me that needed to be rounded out in order to achieve what I wanted to eventually go after and do, which was open my own business. So I went back to my wife, Linda, and I said, before I do anything on my own, I have to work for Danielle. Now, what's crazy is that letter, he saved it. And he wrote in the top right-hand corner, save this letter, could be a good chef in the future. The day I left Cafe Blue to move to Minneapolis, he gave me the letter back.
So cool. I love that.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Mill. Mill is a food recycler for your home. What exactly is a food recycler? We have the perfect person to explain more. Who better than the co-founder and president of Mill to tell us all about this sleek kitchen item that can change the world one banana peel and avocado pit at a time. I'm with Harry Tannenbaum.
I've got to ask you, how do you describe Mill?
The way I describe Mill, it's a new kind of kitchen appliance that eats all the food that you don't eat. Overnight, it takes whatever you throw at it and turns it into something that kind of looks like coffee grounds and smells like spices in the morning. That material, which we call food grounds, is a resource that you can use in a garden or for all sorts of other things.
I love that. A couple key things stuck out at me here. Food grounds, a resource that's valuable. I have a mill. I'm a proud owner of a mill for about a year now, or a little over a year. And sometimes when I tell people about this, I will back up by saying 100% of the people that come into our home and see the mill are fascinated by it and engage in conversation about it, which I love. And sometimes when I tell people about this, they say, oh yeah, I compost, but this isn't compost. So can you share the difference between what Mill puts out, those food grounds, as you mentioned, and compost?
Yeah, there's a bunch of crazy things. One thing that's really interesting is that food is about 80% water. The main difference between what we're doing inside Mill and a full composting process that takes time is inside Mill, we're dehydrating food overnight. Composting is a longer process that involves microbes. And you can take what's inside Mill and turn it into compost. You can also use it as a fertilizer in your garden the next day or feed it to chickens because it's really food minus the water. We love compost. And this company was inspired by composting. And what really drives us is to try to figure out ways that we can make it faster and easier to manage these scraps in your kitchen. And the way we do that is by dehydrating them overnight.
How does it work? And can you break down the process for us?
We grind that material up and with heat and air, dehydrate it. And there's no smell whatsoever in your kitchen, which is really cool. And you sort of show up to it the next morning and everything's been transformed. And day over day over day after that, you can continue to add scraps on top. It's not a giant device, but you can put 40 pounds of wet scraps in the mill before it needs to be emptied once. We hear all sorts of cool things that folks do with their grounds.
You know, when I think about something that's surprised me with the mill, it's really the ease and the seamlessness of it. I always say everyone knows how to use a garbage can. It's that, but for food scraps or food trim. I think about Rachel Ray, who I work with, and everybody knows her for her garbage bowl. She has this bowl that sits on the counter. Similarly, my process is I have my food scrap bowl. I get my little bowl that I know is going to end up in the mill.
Food is the single largest type of material in the landfill. 25% of our landfills are food. And the single largest source of that, not restaurants, households. Average American household throws away per EPA $3,000 worth of food a year. When you look at the numbers of the wasted food in the US, only 5-8% of that is composted. And that's not because people aren't into it. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to waste food today. But the thing that drove us was, how can we make this super easy? No mess, no stress, no ick, no flies, and no food waste. Actually keep the food as food.
Harry, I really appreciate this conversation. Mill is one of those companies that always leaves me thinking differently. To learn more about Mill, go to mill.com and follow them on social media @Mill. And go to mill.com/BTP for $75 off your order. Offer may expire. Mill, we thank you.
This is going to sound really silly, but is there one thing you never forget that you learned from Danielle?
Curiosity. He's constantly curious. He's always looking to learn. He never feels as though he knows the answer to the question he's asking and or knows the answer to the question you're asking.
Interesting.
He has a sense of curiosity and confidence that is unlike anybody else I've ever met.
That's really cool. You know, you mentioned how you guys, I'm not saying it as eloquently as you clicked that week, but I'm really curious about trust, like at that level, his trust for you at that time, and even your trust for maybe your team members right now. When you're working for someone like that, of that caliber, how long does it take to build trust?
I'm sure it took longer than I realized. I do remember early in the first 6 months I was working for him. It was a very important lesson I learned. The chef called me, Danielle called me the day after a service and said, "Hey, do you have eggs in your walk-in cooler?" And I knew what this was about. And what it was about was the night before, a regular of ours asked if they could have something for dinner that included eggs. And I said no, because it wasn't on the menu. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it was wrong. And Danielle called me and just very matter of fact, without being upset, says, "You have eggs in the fridge?" I said, "Yes, chef." He said, "Did so-and-so come in last night and request this?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "I just want you to know that when you say no to them, that's me saying no." He said, "So just always know that even though the awning says Café Boulud and it's my name on it, you're the one who's in charge of Café Boulud." Now, not until a little bit later did I realize how impactful that meant to me until I visited his parents outside of Lyon, France, when I was dropping off all my equipment for the Bocuse store in his father's barn, and his mom and dad came out and said, "Would you like an espresso?" I said, "Sure." I sit down for an espresso. The espresso turns into a 4-hour lunch. Now, it's one thing to have lunch with Danielle's mom and dad. It's another thing to have lunch with his mom and dad, speak only French, and sit in their house that was once the original Café Boulud that was built in 1901. My point being is that I wasn't in charge of Café Boulud on 76 in Madison. I was in charge of Café Boulud that started out in 1901. And so when I'm saying no to that, I was saying no to a lot more than just that guest. That to me was when the trust really changed. And when I remember telling him this story and saying how impactful that moment was, I mean, it changed the way I thought about that restaurant forever moving forward. And it changed the way that I taught my team. It changed the way that I run my business, everything, because it's very matter of fact that we think that what we create is greater than something that it is, when in reality, we're standing on the shoulders of somebody who created it before us. And we are on the platform because of that reason. And if we don't recall, remember, or respect that, how can we possibly expect the trust from what's to come from it?
Incredible. So you worked for Danielle for 7 years?
Yep.
So when did you know it was time to do your own thing?
I was preparing myself and preparing Danielle for this to come. I just didn't know when. You know, we tried to, for the last 2 years of my time with him, I was in charge of Café Boulud in New York City, Toronto, and Palm Beach. So my responsibility had changed. My responsibility had grown. My travel had increased. You know, the intentionality of disciplines had to change because of that. And then I remember going to work one day and I just thought, while I'm very content working for him, I still have this itch to do something on my own. And so honestly, I just had a conversation with him about it and said, "Here's where I am. Here's what I think. This is what I found. What do you think?" And really just sort of went down that road with him. And then he did, the unthinkable. He supported it. He invested in my business and became a partner in it. He got some other of his friends to do the same that are all chefs, all names and I know, and really helped me sort of take that leap of faith of not knowing where to go and what to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. Did you know you were going back to Minnesota?
At the time I did. When I talked to him, I was looking in Southern California for spaces. I was looking in Minnesota and I was looking in New York. New York felt a little too close to him for me. And I didn't know if I really wanted to live in New York at that time anymore. I felt like I was probably ready to move on. And honestly, I came to Minneapolis. I looked at the space that is now Spoon and Stable. It was an office building filled with cubicles and boardrooms and all sorts of shit that I don't know what you're supposed to do with. And I said, "The space is perfect. I'll take it." And so we demoed it. I signed the lease. I left Café Boulud. My last day was May 31st. I moved back to Minnesota June 1st. I picked up my keys on July 7th, and I opened Spoon November 14th.
Wow. That's a quick demo, it sounds like, huh?
We had been planning it, right? So from May until November, all the plans were in, the submittals, the permits, the subs were getting awarded their contracts, everything was done. So once we were ready to go, it was go time.
So you opened Spoon and Stable in 2014? 14 in the North Loop area of Minnesota. Walk me like into the restaurant since I have not been yet. What am I seeing, smelling, eating?
From the outside, the space is very small. The facade of the building is very tiny. So you tend to look at it and think this is a small little neighborhood restaurant. Of course, Instagram and other things can change that pretty quickly because you see images ahead of time. But then when you walk into the space, you come up this ramp and to your left is this bar. And I have 24-foot tall floor to ceiling. So the bar is 18 feet tall. It's beautiful. It's got this great lighting. And then you walk into the restaurant and there's a skylight that runs the whole length of the space. So in the summertime, like now, or sort of end of summer, you get all this beautiful natural light to flood the dining room all day. In the winter, it's dark by 5 o'clock. So it's dark by 5 o'clock. During brunch time, you get all that beautiful natural light. The kitchen then sits in this sort of in the back part of the dining room. There's 90 seats in the dining room, about 40 seats in the bar lounge. And then behind the kitchen, I have 2 private dining rooms that seat 12 to 24 people. Or you can open it up and see close to 36. But a lot of the intention of building Spoon and Stable, I wanted the kitchen in the dining room. I wanted to be able to be with the guests. I wanted to see them. I wanted to cook for them. I wanted to talk to them. I wanted them to come talk to me. I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to feel as if the headline was going to read New York City chef comes home to teach us how to dine and cook and whatever. Like I wanted to stay as far away from that typecasting as possible and just focus really on cooking delicious food and delivering warm hospitality.
Very cool. Can you give people the quick meaning behind the spoon part?
Yeah, so it was originally a horse stable built in 1906. And the spoon part is because I've stolen thousands of spoons from restaurants all over the country and the world to just basically remember where I was. I've been gifted more than I've stolen, if that makes up for anything when I get to the gates of heaven. But that's really where the spoon part comes.
That's very cool. What was the last spoon you added to your collection?
That's a good question. Let's see. The last one would have been when I was having dinner at a restaurant in Minneapolis here called Dario, which was this past weekend. I had a great dinner there. Joe is the chef and the owner, a delicious pasta program, and he's got these cool little gold spoons. So I swiped one.
The industry people must know.
They know.
You probably get frisked at some restaurants when they leave from Chef Friends.
The embarrassing time is when they give you a spoon at the check as a gift, and you're like, do I take the spoon out of my pocket that I've stolen, or do I take 2?
That's funny.
So then I have this uncomfortable moment of being like, I appreciate the gift. Let me take this one out of my pocket that I thefted two courses ago. I know, it's bad.
Okay, so I want to talk about some of the other projects you have under the Soigné Hospitality Group umbrella. 3 new openings this fall alone in your first out-of-state opening. Why are you doing this to yourself?
I know. Well, it's funny. When we planned it a year ago, it wasn't all of the fall. But it's okay. So we're opening up Naples. We have a property in Naples. We partnered with the Four Seasons down there. We're opening up a restaurant called The Merchant Room. Really excited about that. 60 seats on the interior, about 80 to 90 on the patio. I get the sunset over the Gulf every night. The cuisine, the style of food, the style of service, think very much Spoon and Stable, but down in Florida. And then we're reopening Belcourt in the North Loop here, just down the alley from Spoon and Stable. French Bistro and Bakery, open all day and all night. And then we're opening up a Belcourt Bakery only in Edina, which is a suburb about 15 minutes from downtown Minneapolis. That'll be open just during the day. Bakery, cafe, coffee shop.
Belcourt's had quite the evolution.
Totally.
Yeah, like taking on a few different lives. I love persistence with it.
I love the idea of Belcourt. I love the concept of it. So we can do more with it, which is what we're doing now.
Are all the openings stressful for you, or do you enjoy the process?
Both. They're both stressful, and I enjoy the process. I mean, I really enjoy the creative process of opening. I enjoy the creative process of problem solving and building teams and getting everybody sort of like focused in on what it is we're creating. As we're growing, we're going to go from presumably 3 spaces to 6 spaces by the end of this year. So we're doubling the company size, which means that systematically we just need to be tighter and more disciplined on everything as a result. So that part can be a little bit stressful, but we have an incredible team that's around me, an incredible team of people that have been around me a long time, and I'm grateful for what it is that they do on a day-to-day basis, but they have the disciplines to help us get it to where we want it to be, which is really important.
Is Demi, your restaurant Demi, is that named after the spoon?
Yeah, Demi Toss.
Yeah, okay, I figured. That place seems very special.
It's awesome. Yeah, 20 seats, such a great little space.
Here at Beyond the Plate, we love Andrew Zimmern.
He's the best.
He's the best for, do I have to explain who he is? Chef, author, TV personality. But I want to talk about your relationship with him. If he was on the call, like what's the dynamic? How would that conversation go with you and him?
If Andrew was on this call right now, we've spoken for 44 minutes and change. I would have spoken for maybe a minute and a half.
That's funny. I was texting with him recently and he asked me to ask you, who is a more gifted natural athlete, you or him?
He knows the answer to that question. 100% not him. You give him a basketball, you've never seen more air balls happen in a short span than before, that's for sure. No, listen, I've known Andrew a long time. Thankfully, we are not only really, really good friends, but we're also really good business partners in what we do. And KZ Pro is a catering business that we have that focuses on cooking for and supplying athletes with high-level nutrition and meals on a day-to-day basis as they go through their seasons. As we all know, the winning team is the healthiest team. And so our focus is to not only continue to do that, but to really revolutionize it in a way that we're excited about. So we've had that company for many years. We cook for the Minnesota Wild, the Timberwolves, and the Lynx, which has been a great thrill and honor. But Andrew is just a great guy. But more so, he's an incredible advocate for others. He's always been that way. He cares deeply about our team and what it is we do. He cares deeply about the Twin Cities and the food scene that it always has been. And he was a part of creating and now what it's become.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love your relationship with chefs. I mean, I love all the community as a whole, but your relationship with chefs is pretty fascinating. And I believe it was recently you had a dinner with Emerald and EJ up in Minnesota, and they were both on the podcast and actually both shouted you out on their episode. And more specifically, EJ was talking about when he was having dinner with his mom and dad with Emerald and at Cafe Boulud, and there was this duck dish that he says he still talks about to this day.
Mm-hmm. Pomegranate glazed duck.
Yeah, it seems like it was this epiphany of, okay, that's a possibility to be a chef, as he literally said. Do you remember that moment? Because it sounds like EJ becoming a chef was partially your fault.
Yeah, I do remember it. And there's a photo in his office of when he's in the kitchen at Cafe Boulud. His mom is taking the photo. Emerald is sort of in the background and maybe a little bit blurred out. EJ and I are in the photo and I'm handing EJ a spoon of food. I don't know what I was handing him to taste, but he was tasting something. You know, I got to know Emerald while he was taping in New York. He was filming there, but he lived a block away from Cafe Boulud while he was filming in New York City. So he would often come in to eat at Cafe by himself or with a friend because that was a block from where he was staying and it was sort of his safe space. And so I got to know him there, have gotten to know him just better and better and better as the years have gone on. And especially in the last couple of years, we've all become really, really close. But that is an incredibly dynamic relationship between those two. I mean, it is amazing to see not only what EJ is capable of doing at his age and his level of maturity to do that, but also how grounded he has stayed through not only his family's success, but also just his father's success and what his father has been able to do. And Emerald is a very different kind of famous, and I mean that in a very respectful way. Everybody has a story of how Emerald changed them, how he grew up with them, and all of that. And while we all do, and it's like we all have that story, and it is so remarkable to think how much he has impacted our culture in America for food. And I just think it's so cool that EJ is helping to carry that torch and making sure that we all recognize that importance while he is still here, while he is still active, while he is still touring around the country and talking to people and cooking meals. I am forever indebted to the chefs that came before me and created what it is that they created, because we would not have the food scene that we have around this country had they not done it. It's so cool to watch what they do.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Can we talk about your Synergy series book?
Yeah.
Lay it on me as we're talking about these relationships.
Yeah. So we have here, let me grab it. We have one. There it is right here. So this is really the whole idea of this book was to take all of these chefs that we had done dinners with. There's like Chris Costow, and we have 25 chefs in here. So we did 6 years of these dinners. We still do them, but we had all this content, photos and recipes and stories. And really, like, the point of this book is for a young or a veteran culinarian or non-culinarian to grab this book and read about, wait a minute, so how did they become who they became? What is the success behind that? Because the success was not through happenstance and or luck. It often came from failure or rejection. And to read about it and to see what we would consider icons in this profession, and to know that, okay, at age 40, Thomas Keller is selling olive oil out of the trunk of his car at a grocery store to buy the French Laundry would otherwise be insane in today's world when you have media that would capture that moment. When you read about that and you think about that, it should encourage us to continue to go after our dreams and not discourage us to think, I didn't get it right away, so I'm not going to ever get it. And so this book is all about that. 100% of the proceeds go back to Mentor, the nonprofit organization founded by Thomas and Danielle and Jerome Bocuse. It's a book that's near and dear to us, and so pick it up. You can go on our website, gavinkaysen.com, and buy it. I know Thomas carries it on his website at the Finesse store. I know Kitchen Arts and Letters in New New York City is also carrying it now. So it's out in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. We will for sure link to it too in the show notes of this episode. And speaking of mentor and giving back, as you know, the podcast celebrates social impact with every one of our guests. And quite frankly, it's one of the main reasons why we started this podcast. So I would love for you to share even more work that you've done and do in the community, whether it's Independent Restaurant Coalition or Heart of the House Foundation, anything you would like to.
Like even the Synergy dinners, we give back to different charities every year to that. I sit on the board of Second Harvest Heartland here in the Twin Cities. I spend a lot of time at Fast Break Foundation, which is the nonprofit organization associated with the Timberwolves and the Lynx. I'm grateful to be able to have the opportunity to be part of that philanthropy, but I recognize that what got me there was a tremendous amount of hard work and goodwill, but also being at the right place at the right time and meeting these people that could otherwise help us be a part of it. And I just think listen, no matter where we all are in life, it doesn't matter how successful you are, you always need somebody to be by your side and give you a hand on something. I don't care who you are, and I don't care how powerful you think you are. Everybody needs that person that they can call. And like Andrew's one of those people for me. Reed is one of those people for me. My wife is one of those people for me. And so giving back and filling that gratitude bucket is important. You have twins, as you said. There's a great book called How Full Is Your Bucket? You should buy it. It's awesome. It's all about that, right? It's all about like gratification, and basically being kind to somebody else fills their bucket. And when you fill their bucket, you intentionally then fill yours without knowing it. And so the whole story is about basically that: grandparents teaching their grandkids how to fill others' buckets and realizing at the end of the day that their bucket is more full than they ever anticipated. And that's what this is. So I love it.
Love that. I just wrote that down. For sure gonna hop on Amazon right after this.
Yeah, it's a great book.
That's awesome. To round it out there, I always say to people, like, give what you can, whether you're sharing your voice, which you hit upon, your dollars you hit upon, or your time. There's no one way to give, and it could simply be to what Chef just said, filling someone's bucket, and in turn, you're filling your own.
Yep.
Before we go into a quick speed round, I'd really love to know, what inspires you? Is there a meal or a person or a recent experience?
I don't know if I would say there's one thing that inspires. Actually, I will tell you what inspires me is silence, because I'm always around chaos. And so when I'm around silence, I can find inspiration. I don't even find it. It finds me. I don't have to look for it. And so silence inspires me as a result.
I love that. All right, we'll do a quick speed round and then we'll close out.
Cool.
All right, number one, what did you have for dinner last night?
I had New York strip with corn grits and zucchini.
Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
Baked bread.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Burned bread.
What pisses you off in the kitchen?
Dirty kitchens.
And what makes you happy in the kitchen?
Perfectly folded towels.
Good one. How about a book or a resource that you would suggest to young cooks?
Letters to a Young Chef.
That's a good one. Here at Beyond the Plate, we also have this audio newsletter that we do called Heard, where I share a few things that are on my plate at the moment. It could be a restaurant meal, a product or ingredient I love, a recipe, something philanthropy related. But I would love to know one thing on your plate that I can feature in one of our forthcoming Heard episodes.
That's a good one. So I would say what's on my plate right now, because we have a tremendous amount of work in front of us with these openings, I tend to take a lot of time to spend writing and reflecting why I'm in this position and what this position then means for us to be successful in it. I don't measure the success by way of what others think, but rather measure the success of how our team responds to the opening in itself and how we work with each other for one another at that time. As a result, because of when the openings are happening, which will be later in the year, probably in November, from November and end of November, usually until the beginning part of January, I spend a lot of time reflecting and writing what my goals will be for the next year. And so because that'll happen at that same time, on my plate is knowing that I probably won't be able to achieve that writing as thoughtfully this year as I have in years past. And so it's okay. I'll forgive myself for that now, but it'll be part of my process, because that's the way that I think about and the way that I strategize how I want to move forward. Is I really spend a lot of time writing on what those goals are. I'm an advocate big time for writing those goals. If you talk to anybody who's ever worked for me that has created success in their life, they will tell you it's because I sat down with them probably 15 years ago and said, give me your 5 professional goals and give me your 5 personal goals. And I want to see how they intersect with one another. Because a goal is not to create balance in life, right? For me, because work is my life and life is my work. And if I keep chasing balance, I'll never find it. How can I chase that balance, for me, my goal is then, can I leave tonight at 6 p.m. to go watch my son's football game and then come back to work at 8:30? I can't. That's achieving a goal. It's not balanced, but it's achieving my goal.
I love that.
And so that will be on my plate for sure as I start to go into this cycle of the year.
I love that. All right, Chef, where can people find you?
So at Gavin Kaysen, I'm on Instagram. I'm only on that. We have all of our websites. So Stay Soigné, which is SOIGNE.com, is the landing page for all of our restaurants. And you can find what we're doing there now and into the future.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time. This is incredible.
My pleasure. It was really great to connect.
Find all social media links for myself, Beyond the Plate, and our guests in the episode notes and on beyondtheplatepodcast.com. As always, a big thanks to the whole Beyond the Plate team. And if you have a moment, we'd be grateful for your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday for an episode of Beyond the Drink, our companion podcast of Beyond the Plate, brought to you by our friends at Ford's Gym. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.